So I'm going to read the two short passages that I'm preaching on today from Hebrews. Actually, one part of it's already been referenced, so hopefully be familiar to you. So Hebrews 12, 1-3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And going back a bit, Hebrews 10, 23-25. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So, from those verses, it won't be surprising that what I'm going to talk to you about is persevering and encouraging. And I had one of the passages a few months ago. I felt that was what I was going to talk about, but the talk changed many times as I pondered, and God showed me different things. And I'm looking at these because I don't know you, I know a few of you a little bit, and I don't know how long you've been a Christian or whether you are a Christian, you're not sure. Some may have been Christians for years. I have for 40-ish or so. And we realise that things, when we start on things, they may feel like they're easy and we might have the energy, enthusiasm, but as time goes on, we see it can be tough and it can be hard. There's a mixture of things that go on, and I'm going to go through bits of the passage as well, hopefully to encourage us to persevere and encourage others on the journey. So a little bit about Hebrews is we're not totally sure who it's written for, but it's possible it's Christians who live in Italy, maybe Rome. And again, there's debate about who wrote it, whether it was Paul or perhaps one of his disciples. I'm not going to go into that exactly, but the key is that these people reading this letter have been Christians for some time. When they originally became Christian, they probably thought that Jesus was coming back maybe a few months, a few years, and time has gone on and he hasn't come back. And they've also got used to living this life which goes against the tide, it goes against the things in their society, and they've probably realised this is actually tough. So the whole of Hebrews, the kind of general theme is to encourage, to keep going with the faith, not fall off the side. So I've been thinking that it's more like a race, where he describes it as a race, as does Paul through the Bible, but more of a marathon rather than a sprint. I don't know what you think about running. My husband loves it and has done a couple of marathons, one a few weeks ago. I'm more of a short sprint person. Well, not really a sprint, a short jog person, I would say. I'm going to just play a short video, a 2-minute video, just to get you into the spirit of what it might be like to do a marathon and how exciting it is. So, to come. Okay, so, well, let me describe what it shows you. The spirit of a marathon. It's sunny. People are smiling, people are cheering, even those who are running are smiling and looking like it's okay, and they're waving to the crowd. And then you get lots of people dressed up as well. They're not just doing a marathon, but they've got some, wild and wonderful outfits. And what else do you have? Lots of noise, lots of, I said, cheering. And then even those who are struggling, you see, as you can sort of see with two people beside, even the people who are struggling, you get others, next to them, helping them on, encourage them, and it is a feel-good thing. There's music, there's lots in London, there's also the monuments that you go around, so it looks like it's fun. And I was going to ask you, once you'd seen it with the music and you're all G'd up, whether now you'd want to do a marathon. I suspect it's a no, because you've probably heard about them, you've seen what actually happens, that it may look exciting at the beginning, but there's still 26.2 miles, and the 0.2 is important, I think, for those who've done it, to get through. And when, it's about a month ago, Andy, my husband, and my brother, Francis, did a marathon in York, we were at the start, and it was exciting. There was a PA, there was music, there was a countdown. It felt really exciting. Even those who weren't doing it, we were glad we weren't doing it, but we just felt the sense of anticipation. And then everybody kind of went off, and we had to sort of get a bus to find the next place we could see them. And I was going to say, I wonder what it was like for you when you became a Christian. Some people become Christians in quite a dramatic way. Others, it's gradual, and it's little steps along the way to get to that point. But it should be marked with some joy, excitement, peace that comes into your life with knowing Jesus, and expectations of what God is going to do through you. So I don't know if you think back to what you felt at that time, and then I'd ask you, how do you feel now? How's that joy and excitement, that peace and expectation? I looked for a picture, I searched for tired runners, and this is what we have, although they don't look ever so tired, but anyway, they are more tired than they were at the start. And when we saw, Andy and Francis at about 14 miles, already looking a bit tired, but he said after that point, they went uphill. They went uphill for 5 miles, and he said that really took it out of me. Francis, my brother, didn't remember the hill, but he remembered the wind. It was against the wind. And I expect if I go round and ask everybody, there are times that you've been through, maybe times you're going through now, where you can feel the wind or the uphill. And as someone, again, I think has said already, Jesus promised to be with us through those times, but didn't promise that they wouldn't happen. In fact, he promised that they would happen. Which is okay when we're feeling all great and fantastic, but when you're in the middle of it, holding on to Jesus can be hard, and holding on to our faith. So the first encouragement in these passages is about looking at the witnesses. And the chapter before had looked at those people in the Bible who had faith, how they'd followed God, and what had happened to their lives. I don't know who got you into Christianity, introduced you into Christianity, introduced you to Jesus. What was the witness that you saw? Who are the witnesses around you who can encourage you now? We have the Bible, we have many characters there, we can see their journeys. And it's an encouragement to look at people, look at their lives, talk to them about their lives, things that help you, help them, or help you as well. You saw, I think you might have seen this slide as we fiddled around. So the second thing they mention is getting rid of things that don't help, throwing it off. I wouldn't want to run 26 miles, as I said, but I wouldn't want to be dressed up as a fairy godmother. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. And then behind there is Bagpuss, another thing that's going to help you run. And quite phenomenally, there's a guy on the right, or our right, who's carrying a fridge. Now, if you were trying to tell someone how to run a marathon, that would not be the first instruction. Or say, sort out your running and then let's put a fridge on top of you. Yes, it certainly gets people looking, and I think the idea is gets more donations. But it doesn't actually help you run. And in this passage, it talks about, throwing off what hinders you, and it also talks about sin. I think we all know how sin doesn't help our faith, so deliberately, I'll say we all can muck up, but deliberately going against God is going to just make it harder to stick with your faith, isn't it? It's going to pull you away. They look at the original word about hindering. Different translations say different things, but often if you look back at the Greek word, you can see it talks about distracting. So it's, if you've got a fridge on your back, that's going to distract you from going forwards, the pain on your back or the heat of being bagpuss. So the encouragement is to get rid of those things that are pulling you away. There may be things that you've chosen that were good, maybe a job, maybe a relationship, maybe activities, things that you've done which were fine. They're not sinful in themselves, but they become a bit more burdensome or actually pull you away because you're tired and it's hard to keep your faith going because you're tired, or you haven't got the usual support that you have. You're not with the people who pray for you. So it's I suppose I'm challenging anybody who's thinking, is there anything that's in my life that is actually pulling me away from the time with God and the support I need? Another way of describing it is heaviness. And the two things that came to mind when I thought about heaviness, well, if you've been a Christian, or if you've lived life for any length of time, there will have been disappointment. And sometimes we kind of start carrying that disappointment into the rest of our lives or into the next thing that comes along. So I wonder if that might apply to any of you. And if that is the case, then it's time to ask God to relieve that, speak to others as well, to help you to let that go. And the one other thing which came to mind was expectations. Sometimes God asks us to do something, or we take a path that he says, and we then make it harder for ourselves because we have put great expectations. Maybe that's great success, or maybe other things. I'll give you an example of something last year, because I'm guilty of this quite often. I felt God asked me to organise with others a refreshment day for our community group at church, so about 30 or so. And the place and the speaker came to mind, and that was all set up, that was fine. And I imagined this day, it was going to be September, post-COVID in theory. I imagined it's going to be a reflection time, a restful time with God. And I was really excited about it, and the other leaders thought it was a good idea. As we sort of approached the time, maybe 3 months to go, we hardly had anybody sign up. And I thought, this isn't what I was expecting. I think we had about 8 at one point. I was imagining everybody wanting to come and all be looking good. So I prayed, and I felt God say, well, ask other people outside your group. So there was 2 or 3 that came to mind. I asked them, and they said yes. They'd love to come. Great. And I kept asking other ones, and there was lots of no's. And I know you're not supposed to take it personally, but I find it really difficult. You're saying about asking people and people saying no. Just makes me feel a bit inside. And I know there's reasons why people can't come, but I just thought, this isn't what I imagined, God. And I was getting frustrated, I think with myself, I think probably with God, because what I had imagined, this successful event, wasn't happening. Anyway, at one point I got to my limit and prayed to God. I said, look, we're going to let down the speaker and blah, 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 blah. And another lady came to mind, and she's someone not part of my church. I know she's Christian. I know she's going through a really difficult time. Lots of things happening to her, and she's sort of a connection through work. But I thought, I don't really know her that well. But I thought, no, I need to invite her. So I messaged her and said, explain what it was, would she like to come? And the message came back saying, thank you so much, that is what I really need. She'd had another horrendous bit of news that day, and she said, I just didn't know what to do. And your message just tells me that God is looking after me. I want to come to that. So, I was exuberant, thinking fantastic. We kind of limped on to the day itself, and there was various other things that went wrong. But the night before, I got a message from the speaker saying, please pray for me. I'm stuck on the runway in the Isle of Man. She'd gone there for a family funeral, and now the plane had broken down, and they were trying to fix it. So we started praying, and we prayed that she would also hear anything new from God for tomorrow. I knew she was an experienced speaker. 3 hours later, I got a text she'd arrived to Liverpool. I'm arrived, thank God. And I think she got that we were going at the House of Bread, so she got there, or got to the hotel or whatever at sort of 1 a.m. The next day, it seemed to go very well, as far as I could tell, but she told us that when she was on that on the runway praying, because she said she's not normally a person who's scared with flying, but she said, I was so scared because she said these teenagers were climbing over the plane, sticking it together with sticky tape because it wasn't working. And she said, God, help me. But then she got this download of this story, which she shared on that day, and it spoke directly to the one lady that I'd invited. And as Ruth, the speaker, said to me, she was supposed to be here. And I thought, yes. And so where I started that story was sometimes we have ideas and expectations of what we've been asked to do that aren't correct. I had an idea that was going to have a big number and everybody was going to be happy, and I had ideas of what God was doing, but he was doing something different. And I had ideas of big numbers, and God wasn't thinking of big numbers, but he showed up and did his thing. So he invites us to follow him rather than us inviting God to do what we've decided on. So if life or faith, because sometimes often they're different. You might be going through a really difficult time, but your faith is really strong. Sometimes going through a difficult time for a while can actually knock your faith. But if life or faith is feeling like this, my recommendation is asking God what's going on, and have you got it right? You might have got it completely right, and you just need some other people to push the load, or maybe it's doing something different. This is a picture at my work. It's along the corridor of the medical school, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, someone's put that there. But it might be difficult, and that might be the right course, or it might be that things need to change, or God has got you to that point because he wants you to do something different. So although it doesn't quote this in Hebrews, the obvious thing is if not putting the wrong things on, you need to take the right kit. I think everybody knows what you wear if you're running. But the one thing they've put down there, you might see sort of on the right hand side, is the drinks and the sugar gels and things like that. Standing along the race, standing next to a guy whose wife kind of ran through, and it was a quick pit stop, and he gave her some sugar gel, and she wanted one snack to be removed from the backpack, and that's what she needed then. And it just struck me, whatever stories you're going through, whatever your life is, you need sustenance. Whether we're new Christians or older Christians, we can't say, well, we did the run last week and we ate on our sugar gels then. and then we don't need it now. Everybody needs sustenance as they go on. Everybody needs time with God, that prayer time, quiet time, praise, rest. There may be different things that you need, but we all need that time with God in some way and regularly. This lady obviously particularly wanted some chewy bar or whatever bar it was. If I'd asked Andy, he would have said, no, I can't have that on my run, but still needs the sugar, still needs it every 3 miles or whatever it is. So it may be that you need a time with God, but you do it differently for someone else. You do it at a different time of day, but you need it. You need others to keep you going and to pray with you as well. So another question is, how much sustenance are you getting? How much do you need to keep going? And some of the points, I don't want to sort of stand in the way of this slide. So some of the points from that first passage in Hebrews, how to just keep going to the end. It seems obvious, but we sometimes need to be reminded that you look at Jesus' example. How did he live? As we said, he was the pioneer, the starter of how to live life in faith in God. And he's also the kind of goal you're going towards. Although strange, you're running along with Jesus, but you're also going to a time when there is no sin, there is no suffering. You are with Jesus and the Father. Hold on to the hope you profess. I suppose it may sound an odd question, but what is the hope that you carry? Is it what it says in the Bible? Have we changed that? Have we made it smaller? And do you speak it out? I've been challenged sometimes to actually speak out what I believe, speak out the truth. And it does make a difference to your life, actually speaking out loud, and then obviously sharing it with others. Remember is faithful. We've sung about that. One of the ways is testimonies. As we say, we've just moved house. We started the process, putting our house on sale last February. It's been a long process, and at times we've felt a bit fed up. And there was one walk when I think I was spouting all the problems, all the potential problems, and we were feeling doom and gloom. And then at some point in that walk, we changed, and we started thinking about what had God done before. And I remembered a time that God had helped me with another house, and then Andy remembered something, and we kind of bounced off each other, remembering the things that God has done. And by the end of the walk, nothing had changed in our situation, but we felt a lot more positive and remembering about God being with us and that he's faithful and he still will be faithful. The pile of stones is a reference back to when the Hebrews went through, obviously they came from Egypt, went through the Red Sea in the time of desert land, and then they came through the Jordan. And once they came across the Jordan with Joshua, God said to go back and get 12 stones and pile them up, so that when your children or your children's children ask you, what's that about? You can say what God has done. And we have short-term memories, I certainly do. And it is good for us to remind ourselves and others what God has done, so we don't get kind of clouded down with the circumstances. In the film that you would have seen, there is there's one guy in the black who is struggling right at the end, and this other guy gets alongside him. I love this photo because you could see the end isn't that far, and he's going, look, that is where you're going. You're not far. You haven't got much to go. Come on. And then you sort of see he's got his arm around his neck, and he's encouraging and saying a few words, and then you have another chap, one of the I can't remember what you call them, wardens or whatever, supporters, come along, and there's two of them who get him near the line. I think they sort of take their hands off right at the end, and he kids across. But we are called in that second passage to encourage each other to keep meeting, not to stop meeting. And it is hard when we're busy and tired and winter comes in and it's dark. But we need each other, we need prayer, we need to speak about what our lives are so that we can keep going. And last but one slide. This is the promise that came to mind as I was thinking about this passage in Hebrews. And let me just read it out to you. It's probably well known from Isaiah. He strengthens those who are weak and tired. Even those who are young grow weak. Young people can fall exhausted. But those who trust in the Lord for help will find their strength renewed. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. And they will walk and not grow weak. So it's the same God who said that to Isaiah and says that to us now. So I'm just going to leave this last slide. We'll see what we're quite doing. I've put a few questions here to ask yourself. Now, not all these questions may kind of connect with you at all. It may just be one question you read and you think, yeah. Or sometimes I read a question and it kind of annoys me, or it kind of frustrates me, and I then think, okay, that's the question for me. So how is your faith? Are you soaring? Are you walking? Are you running? Sometimes that just gets us into thinking what's going on. Are you carrying anything extra? Where is your focus at the moment? And how strong is your hope? You may be feeling really quite strong and you're someone who's soaring at the moment. So, who do you need to encourage? What testimonies do you have to tell, and to whom? Sometimes it's hard to do that because we think we should be sorted when we're telling a testimony, but quite often God tells me, tell them a testimony where you've mucked up and then I've come through, and that you're still working on something. So I'm just going to perhaps pray for us, and then I know we're going to have a time to move into worship as well. Lord, I thank you that you are Lord. And I'm sorry that I know that I sometimes, quite often try and be Lord and ask you to follow me and help me on my journey. But thank you that you're the one who started this. You are the pioneer. And thank you for your overwhelming love that draws me on, picks me up, carries me. And thank you for my friends and family and those who've encouraged me along the journey and encourage me right now. Help us, Lord, to hear what you want to say to each one of us now. And will you continue to speak to us through this day and through this week? Amen.